Let me ask you guys something. Where does your brain go when I say the word intrigue teams? Does it mean a roster that's going to self implode on itself? Maybe one that overexceeds expectations, drastically falls under the radar, or is building off of a very successful season? Intrigue means a lot. And to me, it means all of those things. So I figured as I was running on the elliptical this morning and came up with this idea, let's turn it into a video and talk about every conference's most intriguing team going into 2024. But if you are new here, welcome on into the channel, people. My name is Cole Thompson. I'm a radio show host based in Houston, and I talk college football daily. I get that the season's over. We got to look ahead to future endeavors, but I love talking college football, and I'm here to keep you entertained throughout the entire offseason. So if this is the daily dose of college football content you need, whether it be recap in 2023, a look ahead in 2024, bold predictions, conversations, I answer questions live on the show, whatever it is, make sure that you smash that subscribe button down below. Leave a comment telling me who is your most intriguing team going into 2024. Tell your friends, your family, your mortal enemies, best of bros, college football aficionados everywhere about this channel, because we're on the race to become the #1 YouTube show talking college football daily, and we're going to get there. So jump on in while the water's fine. Tell your friends and everybody else about my social media accounts, and follow me over there at Mr. Cole Thompson, Twitter, X, Instagram. But that way, conversations surrounding our favorite sport never have to stop flowing. Intrigue teams. Every single conference has at least one, and our ideas are going to completely differ. So I don't want to take up too much time, but when I think of intrigue teams, they're the ones that either have the most to prove or the most questions left behind. And there's kind of a common ground with all of these rosters, but in my mind, these are the ones that I will be paying attention to and doing really big deep dives on going into the offseason and really looking forward to next year. Let's start off in the SEC. For me, it's Missouri. It's crazy because Alabama feels like the right answer. Kalen DeBoer comes in. It's a changing of the times. And also Nick Saban, we don't know what his role exactly is going to be. What is the mass exodus of transfer portal talent leaving? And is Alabama going to add enough players in the second wave to be able to be sustainable? But to me, Missouri stands out because whether or not we agree that Eli Drinkwitz is from this planet, he's a good coach and he understands football and he's gotten down his P's and Q's with lesser talent. And this was a team that was not expected to do much this year. You know, Brady Cook entered as questionable QB1. No one really knew what Theo Wease was going to do. Cody Schrader was fine, but he wasn't one of the elite bell cows of the SEC. Well, make no mistake, they went 11-2. They beat Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. And now you look at what's returning. Everyone's wondering, how do you build off that? What's next in the tank for Drink and Company? And how do you do so without Blake Baker? Because now he's actually running the show down in Louisiana alongside Brian Kelly. Their schedule is very manageable next year. In fact, you could say that when you look at them and Ole Miss, they actually have the upper hand if there was only 3 teams to get in. They don't have to worry about games against Alabama. They don't have to worry about games against really anybody significant besides, I think, Texas A&M is maybe their biggest road test. And even then, that still feels pretty comfortable. And you look at what you added in via the portal. Caden Green, plug and play left tackle, or maybe even right tackle. Marcus Carroll from Georgia State, really good running back. And I think a lot of people are going to garner his intrigue next year. You also brought in 2 different defensive backs, including Toriano Pride from Clemson. That's a plug and play starter in place of Ennis Rackstraw. So I look at them and I say, how do you build? What's next for this roster? Can you actually be in that 11-1 range? Or are you going to find your way back down to Atlanta? Because now when you look at the future of the SEC, there's more teams and there's more intrigue, but there's also more opportunities for you to pull off an upset and then just coast down the stretch. Their schedule, again, manageable. I think that Missouri could end up being a team to watch for when it comes to any bit of conversations in the world of the SEC championship. Next up, Big Ten, Wisconsin. Wisconsin's weird to me because you look at what was supposed to be with the Badgers. They bring over Luke Fickell from Cincinnati. He is supposed to be the next big-time name, and he's waited for his opportunity to become a Power 5 coach. And a lot of people like the moves that were added in the offseason. Phil Longo becomes the offensive coordinator. You get a veteran quarterback in Tanner Mordecai that you saw for years in the AAC. And things just didn't pan out. And now Braylon Allen's gone, and now Tanner Mordecai's gone. But you did bring in another quarterback that fit the air raid system a little bit better for what Phil Longo wants to run, in my opinion, with Tyler Van Dyke. Does he end up being the difference maker? And much like when we talk about the SEC, the Big Ten, they are no longer divisions. So what does this mean for the Badgers? Are we talking about them as being the year two rising roster, kind of like we saw with Texas a few years ago or Miami last year, the team that actually was bowl eligible and then got to a more prominent bowl game? And now in year three is the one where everything is going to come together. These are Fickell's players. They're on Fickell's staff. They're Fickell's recruits. Is that what we're going to be talking about? Or is this a year where maybe they are under the radar, slowly moving up the leaderboard? They still have the same offense. They have a very manageable schedule, in my opinion. And I like the way that they were able to put together and keep as many defensive players as possible. I don't think Wisconsin is going to be a roster that is making it to Indianapolis, but 9-3 is not off the table for me. That's all I'm going to say when it comes to a team like the Badgers. Next up, Syracuse, ACC. Fran Brown was a really interesting hire, and this is why I have so much intrigue with this team. You had an opportunity to go after Dan Mullen. That was a name that many people thought was going to be on the short list. And you bring in Fran Brown. Brown does not call plays in Georgia. He's a very good defensive back coach. If you look at the laundry list of players he sent to the NFL, you know that he is qualified. And he also is from the area, so he understands the recruiting prowess, but he's never called plays. So what do? You hire people that did, and you hire people that you know and are very well respected in this industry. You bring over Elijah Robinson as your defensive coordinator. I don't know if many people understand what the SEC is all about when it comes to recruiting. There were few and far between that were able to match what Robinson did. Just look at the list of players that he was able to retain along with Terry Price in College Station. I mean, he was beneficially one of the founders of that 2022 recruiting class that we still talk about for all the wrong reasons, but that was because of Robinson. You also went and you added in a couple of veteran defensive linemen. Fadil Diggs came over from Texas A&M along with Robinson, and you got a veteran quarterback in Kyle McCord, which is interesting because McCord could have gone to almost any school. In fact, you could have imagined he would have gotten offers from Florida State, from Miami, maybe Nebraska, but instead he goes to Syracuse, where the schedule, have you seen it? They don't play Clemson. They don't play Florida State. They don't play North Carolina. And they don't play Louisville. Those are probably your top four teams. When you see where this team is, their biggest challenge might be NC State on the road, and we don't know what they're going to be with Grayson McCall at quarterback. So I'm not ready to say that Syracuse is going to be a contender in the ACC, but 8-4 for a brand new coaching staff, especially after what you went through with Dino Babers the last few years, where there was a lot of highs and then a lot of lows. You were on a roller coaster of emotions nonstop. This might be a little bit more stable for you. I don't think that you're going to be a contender in the ACC for the title, but you are going to be a contender for 9 wins. And 9 wins might be enough to at least make you a team of intrigue, on my brain at least. Next up, Big 12, West Virginia. Somebody in the comment section on my Big 12 video said, you need to realize that the conference runs through Morgantown. I appreciate that you're watching the videos because you got really deep into it. But to me, the big thing is he wrong? Every team right now in the Big 12 has an opportunity to make a case for being the flagship program. Even the newcomers from Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, Utah, every one of them has their stake of claim to end up being the new big boss in town. And in my opinion, why would you count out Neil Brown? Does anybody remember what happened last season? Everyone goes down to Arlington. They have the preseason votes. The Big 12 media gets together. You make your selections. And 99.2% of the votes said West Virginia is going to finish in last place and Neil Brown's going to be out of a job. And he went rampant. He immediately started calling out people. He wasn't afraid to speak his mind. And slowly he said, watch us do what we do. And he did. He really did. He had Garrett Green actually exceed expectations, in my opinion. He had a freshman running back in Jaheim White that came on strong down the stretch, 7.7 yards per play. My main question is, you know what you're bringing back defensively. You know what you have at quarterback, and you know what you have at offensive coordinator. What do you do at wide receiver? Because you lose 4 players to the transfer portal. Your number 1 receiver is now headed off to the NFL because he's out of eligibility. Do you think that there is a young player in place that could replace a guy like Devin Carter? Is it Ronnie Gallagher? Is it going to be Preston Fox? Is it going to be Traylon Ray? Is it going to be EJ Horton? Is it going to be Hudson Clement? Who is going to be that new number 1 pass catcher? Because the only thing that you're looking at this point is building off this season. And there's a lot of good teams in the Big 12. It is a dogfight through that conference every single Saturday. And it's why it's the most intriguing one for me. If we were just talking about conferences in general, there is nowhere else I would rather be hitching my wagon to when it comes to intrigue than the Big 12. They are just so unique in different ways to where I don't know who's walking away as the winner of this conference. And that's a good thing. Let's go to the Mountain West. Boise State has really caught my brain because remember, they fired Andy Avalos. They fired their head coach, and then they turn to Danielson, and what happens? They win the Mountain West, and then they become bowl eligible. Well, he's named the head coach, and since being named the head coach, Danielson has now landed the former number one quarterback in the country, Malachi Nelson. He was at USC, didn't really feel the vibe, wanted to get an opportunity to play, and so now he's going to Idaho, and there is going to be a team in the Group of 5 level that will make the college football playoff. Why not Boise State? You saw what they did this past offseason. They lose their quarterback, but they bring in a kid who's probably going to be, if not an upgrade, at least give you that sense of wonder and purpose. I really like this Boise State roster. And they also added in a wide receiver not too long ago, Chris Marshall, who, if you watched him play during his time when he was in high school or when he was at Texas A&M, the talent's there. You just have to hope that the off-the-field incidents are a thing of the past and that everything right now is committed to football. Because if so, you're in a really good spot with the number one wide receiver and a new quarterback at the helm in a conference that's going to garner a lot of attention because of we know that there is going to be a team that at least fights for a spot in the college football playoff. Speaking of Group of 5 schools, Texas State, Sun Belt. This was honestly my favorite story in the state of Texas this year. And I'm not saying anything against the Longhorns because, yeah, cool, you finally ended up not longhorning. But you look at Texas State, G.J. Keeney comes in from Incarnate Word, immediately is not feeling any pressure from the FCS level, and turns this team into somewhat prominent. They get a bowl win over Rice in Frisco, and they have a starting quarterback in TJ Finley that actually looked manageable. And then Finley transfers because Jaden DeLora from Arizona comes in, and then Jaden DeLora is announced that he is no longer a part of the program. So in a span of 48 hours, Texas State, with an emerging coach that probably is going to garner a lot of interest in the next coaching hire, no longer has its starting quarterback, loses its quarterback that was going to start via the transfer portal, and they have all this hope and ammunition that they think that they're going to be a contender in the Sun Belt. It just is a recipe for disaster, but it could be something really intriguing. And this, to me, is why I look at Texas State, because if the Bobcats lose both quarterbacks, veterans that have years of experience, and they still run the table, how are you not naming Kinney the favorite for any job that becomes available in the ACC or in the Big 12, or maybe if you even want to throw him in the SEC? There is no reason to believe that a guy like Kinney can't be successful. He's already made the jump from one conference level to another. I think he would be fine going from FCS to Group of 5 to Power 5, even if it is a place like the SEC. Next up, Jacksonville State of Conference USA. Rich Rodriguez actually did some really wonders for the Gamecocks this year. And it was a shame that they had to go through the bowl ban eligibility nonsense because of why should they? They've earned the right of what they've been able to do. Well, no matter what happens now, that's a thing of the past. They are now bowl eligible. They retained 65% of their roster. Do we think that this is enough to now make them the front runners? And you look at the teams that are in this conference, there is reason for optimism because there's so many questions on the downside. When you look at the very top heavy part, you know who's good and who's bad. Jacksonville State is really, really good. Can they build off this and do enough to where maybe we are mentioning Conference USA as a sleeper in the college football playoff? They have to do a lot of work though, but Rich Rod's got this team in the right direction. So I'm very intrigued to see what happens. Next up, ACC Memphis. Ryan Silverfield going into the year, probably going to be fired. Everyone knew that his seat was cooking. He was burning on like Memphis barbecue, and leads the Tigers to second place in the AAC West Division, if I'm not mistaken. 10-3 year. They get a bowl win. And now you look at this team and you go, well, your job is safe for at least a season, but how do you build off it? Are you going to go back to doing the same type of nonsense that got you in this place beforehand, or are you going to take this roster and be able to fortify it even more? We don't know their schedule just yet. The AAC has not released it, but you also have to remember they could be viewed as the front runners now that you lose SMU and Willie Fritz. SMU is going to the ACC. Willie Fritz departed New Orleans to go to Houston. So who is the front runner for this conference? Is it Jeff Traylor at UTSA? Is it going to be Silverfield at Memphis? Will John Summerall, the coach from Troy, who is one of the most underappreciated coaches in college football, will he come in and emulate the same type of mentality for the Green Wave that you saw underneath Fritz? Or is this a time where someone else comes out of the ashes? Memphis is in a really good spot after this past season, but especially now knowing that one of these teams is gone, you want to capitalize as quickly as possible. And last but not least for me, I'm going to go with the MAC, Ohio. Ohio, after the retiring of Frank Solich, I thought was going to fall off a cliff. Nay, back-to-back 10-win seasons, but they did lose their starting quarterback. Curtis Rourke is now headed down to Bloomington. He is going to be alongside Kirk Cignetti at Indiana. And that's hopefully going to do wonders for him and the Hoosiers. And I'm only saying that because my dad watches these videos and he's an IU grad. But it's more so, where do you turn now? Because they had a quarterback on campus. Anyone remember who it was? That's right. It was Garrett Gundy. It was Mike Gundy's son. Well, he recently entered the transfer portal. So where do you go now for quarterback? And especially when you look at the MAC with Miami of Ohio, what they lost in talent, with Toledo, what they lost in talent. Those were the front runners for the title. But now they're going to be missing some pieces. You're returning most of your roster. You do lose your starting number one receiver, and you do lose your quarterback. But defensively, I think 8 of the 10, 11 guys are coming back. I think the offensive line has 4 starters back. You could still be the team to run the show through the MAC. But how do you get your quarterback? Who is your quarterback for that matter? But in my opinion, if the Bobcats are able to rock and roll, why not at least consider them as a dark horse to make the playoff? I love when we talk about the Macs because Maction, awesome. Every single day should be happening college football. And Maction does that for us on most days. But there you have it. Those are my teams that I'm most intrigued at looking into next season. In the SEC, we got Missouri. Big 10, we got Wisconsin. ACC, we got Syracuse. Big 12, we got West Virginia. Mountain West, we got Boise State. Sun Belt, we got Texas State. Conference USA, we got Jacksonville State. AAC, we got Memphis. And last but certainly not least, Ohio in the Maction. Which one of these teams is ending up going to surprise us in a multitude of ways? Winning a lot or crumbling and falling short? Either way, one of those is going to happen. But if you have any ideas that you want to talk about throughout this entire offseason, go ahead and leave a comment down below. Hit the subscribe button while you're here. Make sure that you also are following me on social media at Mr. Cole Thompson, Twitter, X, Instagram. That way we can continue our conversations. I love interacting with you people. I love being able to do this for a living. So just make sure that you continue to subscribe. And if you have anything that you want to talk about, this is the time for you. Off season. We don't stop. And we're not stopping anytime soon either.